The phases of sensitivity, understanding the 6 types of highly sensitive people, HSPs. Not every highly sensitive person is similar. The trait can be expressed in different nuances, and in fact, there are multiple types of manifestation in sensory processing sensitivity. Welcome to the Understandable podcast. My name is Robert, and today we talk about these, the most common manifestations of high sensitivity, and try to understand the 6 different types. High sensitivity is a personality trait with many different manifestations. And in the last episode, we already conducted the HSP test by Elaine Aaron. And if you haven't taken the test yet, definitely make sure to watch or listen the last episode on the topic. As always, I would like to emphasize that people cannot simply be classified into categories, because as the human personality is very complex and highly individual, that's kind of impossible. The different types are also kind of fluid in their expression, and it is possible that you can identify yourself as one specific kind of personality, right? Or you could also see all 6 or more characteristics in your personality. However, categorization can be helpful, of course. Our brain in particular likes to kind of classify things, put them in boxes, and because it's simplicity. And simplicity saves thought capacity and therefore energy expenditure. So let's start with the 6 different types of high sensitivity. I give you an overview at first here. The first type is the, you would guess it, intuitive empath. Then we have the high sensation seeker, really interesting type. I will do a separate episode on this type in the future. We have the intellectual, we have the sensual, the 5th one is the introvert, and the 6th one is the imaginative, right? So let's get started with number 1, the intuitive empath. Yeah, let's start with the intuitive empath. The spectrum of empathy and great understanding that many highly sensitive people have is a hallmark of this type, right? Intuitive empaths sense the emotional world of their fellow human beings very, very precisely. And they put themselves in the place of others all by themselves. They understand without words how their closest loved ones actually feel. And they can be understanding. Yeah, they understand problems and are like an emotional mirror kind of thing for their loved ones. This ability can obviously also be very exhausting for themselves as well as for their partners, friends, or family members, and they get very close to their fellow human beings and tend to take responsibility for the emotional world of the others. For the intuitive empath, it can be very helpful to create distances to their fellow human beings from time to time to set themselves apart. Then we have number 2, and that one is the high sensation seeker. The high sensation seeker, also called HSS, and I want to emphasize all the types are concepts. So also the HSS is kind of a concept like HSPs in general, right? Human personality is very complex. The HSS has very strong need for adventure or for experiences and he or she usually has a lot of energy, and a dopamine and adrenaline rush feels very satisfying for them. So they seek that. And HSS definitely like to do sports. Even extreme sports are familiar for them, right? Some of them are also kind of workaholics. So the high sensation seeker definitely do a lot. They have a lot of energy. They want to experience many things. High sensation seekers mostly consider themselves as the more extrovert HSP group, which is around 30% according to Elaine Aron. So we get for repetition, we got like 30% extrovert HSPs, roughly we got 70% introvert HSPs. And for a high sensation seeker, it is very important to take breaks in life. Typical for the highly sensitive nature, the intense sensation overstimulates the central nervous system very quickly. However, since they tend to be kind of hyperactive in a way, HSS find it particularly difficult to recognize their own limits and to plan phases of regeneration at an early stage. This is precisely why they are often overwhelmed or even feel kind of burnout. Then we have number 3, and that's kind of the opposite. It's the introvert. Introverts are highly sensitive people of the quiet variety, right? They tend to be more thoughtful and reflective people and experience themselves as rather reserved. Because they prefer to spend time with themselves, they are characterized by a high degree of self-reflection. And introverted high sensitives make up the majority, as I said, of all HSPs with about 70%. This makes them the larger group of the two main groups compared to the extrovert high sensation seekers, for example. And introverted HSPs have less of a problem with seeking withdrawal, right? Rather, it is important for them not to fall into the typical avoidance mode, into the, I would say, avoidance trap, and open up to social situations from time to time. I will also do another episode on the avoidance trap in the future because I think it's a very interesting topic to talk about. Then we have number 4. We continue with the next type, the intellectual, and this type has a pronounced cognitive sensitivity. So, the intellectual includes many people who can perform special memory tasks. They are often mathematically gifted or can remember a large amount of information almost as photographically and reproduce it in very detail. The intellectual is also someone who tries to understand the world with his or her hyperlogical understanding, and it always becomes problematic for this type when his or her very logical perception of the world meets a more, I would say, emotional view, right? Because then he or she does not want to accept a view that is very different from his or her own in this way, and often comes then into conflict with other people who perceive things more intuitively and emotionally. We go on with the 5th type, and that is the sensual type. In the case of highly sensitive people with sensual experience, the sensitive characteristic lies in the area of sensory experience. And that means these people hear, taste, see, smell, and feel more strongly than others. Have you ever walked through the city at night and have been blinded by a car headlight or a kiosk light so much that it did hurt your eyes in a way? Or do you perceive smells and taste and subtle nuances that others can't even detect? then you probably belong to this fifth group of HSPs. And of course, the most intense sensory experiences also eventually lead to overstimulation of the central nervous system, of course, which is why it is of great importance for this type to take regular time out. And then we go on to number 6. Last but not least, there is the imaginative type. Imaginative HSPs have the incredible gift of creating a gigantic fantasy universe in their own minds. And it is not uncommon to see this type rather withdrawn and absorbed in their own world. I also have this from time to time, right? When you are completely in your head, on your own, creating things in your own universe. Imaginative HSPs tend to live in seclusion because they enjoy losing themselves in their own little world, in their own little universe in the head. And often they are also very talented creatively, so they create things, right? They do art, poetry, reading, or writing. It can be problematic for this type if they withdraw too much. So if they get lost in their own world, it's difficult because they neglect social contacts. These were the 6 types of high sensitivity that I was able to find and describe myself. And as I said, the classification is of course fluid. This means you can belong to several or even to all of these types. And now it's up to you. I'm of course interested in which type you feel you belong to and whether you could identify yourself with one or even with all of these 6 types. Definitely let me know in the comments if you watch this on YouTube, and if you don't want to miss any upcoming episodes on the topic, definitely subscribe to the podcast here on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen. I see you in the next episode.